I've been in this job for a number of years now, and I haven't seen situations quite as bad as this for many, many years. Usually at this time of year, it's because of appalling weather that we have issues rather than large amounts of strikes. Because generally speaking, when you do get strikes in the travel industry, they are threatened, but then negotiations take place and they don't go ahead. But I think it's quite unusual that we are actually seeing these strikes going ahead now. Now, with Border Force, I think people due to travel over Christmas have been incredibly worried about these reports. And I know at one stage there were reports potentially of a third of flights being cancelled. That quickly was poo-pooed by the airline saying, no, they intended to run a full service. But I think the reason why it's not having quite such a big impact, quite apart from extra staff being brought in, military personnel included, it's because of the e-gates. When we didn't have e-gates, I remember we did have a Border Force strike quite some time ago before they're in place, and it was a really serious issue. But with e-gates in place, people can use those if you've got a British passport. The only exception to that is if your children are very young, 12 and under, in which case they do have to be physically checked. But that makes a massive difference. It really does, because you just don't need the level of staff there. And the other issue as well is this is about when you get back to the UK. It's not about departing the UK. So remember over the summer when we had all those people really worried about getting through security quickly and turning up really early? Well, this is a different matter. You might be standing in a longer queue when you return, but it's not going to make you miss your flight.
No, of course, because it is the check on coming back in. And just to update people who might be sort of preparing the family, there's no other way of getting around this issue with the kids. They've physically got to go through and get checked.
If they're over 12, then that's fine. But if they're under 12, no, and you're going to have to go with them. I think that's purely practical. They're not very big, are they, really? So it's just a simple matter of that, really. But apart from that, no, everybody else will be able to go through the e-gates as normal. And that also applies to, let's not forget, there are going to be lots of people who aren't UK citizens who come over to the UK, particularly for New Year. I think that's going to be an issue in a different sense because of the rail strikes. I'm hoping that's being publicised in other countries. So they tend to rely more on public transport than we do. Majority of people still go by car to the airport, but not if you're Spanish necessarily. So I'm a bit more worried about that. But they can actually use the e-gates themselves as well. But once they get through, if they found there are no trains there, that could be problematic.
Try the Gatwick Express. Good luck with that at the moment. However, let's just point to one other issue that's bubbling up on the horizon. That is, we understand the US is considering new COVID restrictions on arrivals from China because of unease about what's happening in China or lack of transparency. We're just reading Japan, Malaysia, Taiwan going the same way. Could we see this about to create yet more problems as the numbers increase in China?
I think you've seen those particular destinations are always a bit more wary than other countries in terms of COVID. They introduced much more stringent restrictions and kept them for longer, so I think they're more worried. The general noises we get coming out of the British government is that they're very unlikely to reintroduce restrictions. It's not saying they would never do it, but it's pretty unlikely. So I think, cross fingers, most of us have been vaccinated now or have caught COVID, unfortunately. So I think we're in a very different position from where we were 3 years ago. But having said that, I can't speak for every country in the world, but some, they can all make their own minds up on this. And China in particular has always been very strict on this. And it looks like America is now taking a similar attitude towards China itself.